One of the things that I hear, and I know you hear a lot when we work with clients and when we work with couples, is that in the heat of the moment, when people are in trauma or in re-experiencing trauma or triggered, that they have a really hard time taking a step back, centering themselves, grounding themselves, and being able to communicate effectively. And so I had an experience today, just this morning, not with you, within my own self, where I got to, it's almost like I was having a conversation with myself. And I'll share the story for context for everyone. A few weeks ago, I went to urgent care in order to get my ear checked out because I couldn't hear completely out of one ear. And I had a very pleasant encounter with a nurse and a doctor. Probably lasted about 15 minutes. And they poured something in my ear to clean out wax. And I left. And I got a prescription antibiotic and all that. Fast forward to today when I receive a very large bill in the mail. And I immediately text you and I say, this can't be true. It's not possible that having your earwax removed can cost $1,000. How can this be? And you say, well, I think it's probably not real. And then we both go off and start Googling and researching. And I realize after calling that it is in fact true, that in fact, this company is trying to charge $1,000. And I went into a whole story, a whole downward spiral around where, I don't have this money, I can't afford this, where is this going to come from, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And at the same time, I was having this inner voice that was watching this whole thing go down, excuse me, watching the spiral and saying, isn't this interesting that I'm having this reaction? Isn't this kind of funny? I mean, I literally laughed at one point at myself doing this thing that I do when I get a big bill and I don't know where, how I'm going to pay it. And that observer, that kind of humorous and light voice inside helped me to kind of break out of this pattern, see what it was, and also recognize that actually I do have enough money to cover this bill. And there are avenues for, I can call and try to get the bill reduced and all kinds of things that I can do.
Yeah.
And so that little voice that kind of kept it light, that was laughing in the moment of also freaking out, is kind of what kept me from, being overly reactive and getting lost in a whole melodrama for the rest of the entire day, which is absolutely how I would have been in the past.
Right.
And so I recognize that ability to cultivate a sense of presence, of wisdom, and of humor, even in the moment when things seem terrible, is just really hugely important to communicating with others. And not only your own stuff, but also when you're in a difficult conversation with someone. And
yeah. So, I mean, your example isn't interpersonal romantic relationship, but it is relational in that you had to sort of turn into the world and engage with this in some way. And, I'm sure that it helped you have a much more pleasant and potentially productive interaction with the billing woman who said, oh, well, actually, yeah, turns out we can recategorize you potentially somewhere else, and maybe that's cheaper. It allowed you to be as productive as possible in the world, instead of being reactive. And so, yes, I agree that I think knowing the difference, cultivating the ability to distinguish when we're sort of lost in our egoic reactivity, and just being able to see that. And that's, I think, probably the first step. It's, we make it sound very simple when we just sort of talk about it in this fashion. Oh, you just step into your observer function and sort of watch it unfold. And it does become easy and intuitive and even automatic, but early on, that's going to be really difficult for people, right? And so, what is step one for people? It's just maybe cultivating enough space between ego reactivity and self to be able to look over there and say, wow, I am really upset right now.
Yeah.
Right. Because if there is a calm, observational, rational part of your being that can observe that and make that statement calmly, like, wow, I am really angry right now, with that calm voice, then technically you are not completely lost in that ego reactivity. Yeah. So
it definitely doesn't happen overnight. It takes a long time.
Right.
Well, for me, it took a long time.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think it took years. I mean, I wouldn't know how to put an exact number on it, but years, certainly. But it's also at the same time, it starts paying off right away. Right. So, so it feels important for me to sort of go back to what is it that most people are experiencing in their relationship in these kind of situations, and having been in those situations myself and then working with people in relationships, essentially what it is you have two people who are lost in ego reactivity, attempting to relate to one another, right? Thinking on some level, this is an argument to win, this is a problem to solve, there is a massive confusion that we're going to sort of sort out and be sort of anchored into something rational when we're done with this. And I think the first thing that people need to understand is that when you're in those moments, there's absolutely nothing productive happening. It doesn't matter what it looks like. It doesn't matter what you're thinking of as your higher rational function is telling you. It's not your rational function. It is absolutely your ego. And those are not the same thing. That's maybe a different segment, different chat to talk about. And in fact, it's our investment in this idea when we're feeling emotionally reactive and engaged in a conversation with a significant other, or an argument or a fight or whatever you want to call it, that part of you that's telling you that there's a right and a wrong and that you're in your rational frame of mind is in fact insane in that moment. It is an insane person trying to convince you that they're sane, and that everything is okay, and that if you just sort of dig your heels in harder and really make your point very firmly, that something productive is going to happen here. The other person is going to get you, right? Going to understand you.
And I hear that all the time, that people get caught in these long, like 2-3 hour conversations.
Oh my God.
I know it's so exhausting to imagine. I think it's super common.